So many people walking around are so heavily armed.
Too many guns is the problem, say the media and politicians. But Maj Toure wants more guns.
Everybody should be walking around and like, oh man, I left my gun in the house. Let me go back and get it. It should be as normal as a cell phone.
Everybody?
Everybody.
Toure started a group called Black Guns Matter.
What we said was we're going to make this demographic be the new largest gun buying demographic in America.
His group runs firearms training classes.
We went around the country teaching every area. We went to every area that was violent crime and did classes. I said, hey, if you want to come learn about firearms, come on and learn. Come as you are.
I did a short video with Toure a while back, but he has other interesting things to say. And now that I know many of you actually like longer interviews, here's our full conversation, starting with his claim that all gun control is racist.
Why is gun control racist?
It was literally started to stop black people from having the means to defend themselves.
The colonies in the 1600s had rules against blacks owning guns, specifically.
Yeah, it's a good thing that America is rebel city. It's a good thing we don't like being told what human rights we have. Even though that contradiction was there, again, I'm American. You're not telling me any human rights that I don't have the right to defend. I'm an American. I go by the Constitution. It's not my rules, baby. Thomas Jefferson and the boys wrote this.
Well, Virginia declared it illegal for free blacks to carry any firelock.
All gun control is racist. That literally proves it.
There was less lynching where blacks owned guns.
Rapey McNapey, Hangy McNangy ain't doing it to black communities that's armed. All of the facts and the data are in favor of respect for the Second Amendment, especially in the black community.
It's still racist now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look at the outcome. Let's take the state of California, right? Big state, big economy, a lot of taxes, but big state, big economy. It's a state-issued license, right? A license to carry. If you live in Oakland, if you live in Compton, if you live in Los Angeles in general county, right? The chances of you getting a license to carry, even though the Second Amendment is clear, right, is very little. But if you live in Brentwood, if you live in Orange County, if you live in Beverly Hills, the issue rate for that license to carry goes up. Which one of those areas is more predominantly black and brown people, and which one of those areas are predominantly white folks? Now, this is not to disparage our white brothers and sisters at all. It's to showcase that even though we're not still saying you blacks can't have guns, right? Because some state constitutions literally amended their constitution to say every able-bodied white man can have a firearm. Looking at you, North Carolina, right? So this is just to highlight there's a contradiction there. Black codes, slave codes. Now that it's a faux pas to say we don't want you blacks to have the gun now, the outcome is still the same. Who's arrested more for firearms possession? Black and brown folks. The outcome is still the same. Even though the Second Amendment, which is the supreme law of the land, is very, very clear. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But this bigotry of low expectation to somehow think that black people, brown people, all people now at a certain point, don't have the means or shouldn't have the means, or government should be the only people with firearms, is just poppycock. It's false. It's not real. Especially when you factor in over 30 years of data that shows areas that have more safe and responsible gun owners, over the last 20 some odd years, as more licenses to carry have increased, there's been a decrease in violent crime. So the data's there, but the racism still exists. And I don't use that term racism loosely. Just because somebody's wearing a MAGA hat doesn't make them racist. That means you just don't like their hat or their politic. But when you're talking about the outcome being this group of people being disproportionately impacted by the racist practice of gun control, which is contradictory to the supreme law of these lands, the contradiction's clear.
And the Supreme Court just ruled that you don't need a special license. So why are people being asked for licenses?
Black Guns Matter is cited in that Supreme Court decision.
But you haven't really won because people Because they're still demanding licenses.
It's continuing to get overturned. And it didn't say that's a step in the right direction. Because I think all of the licenses are the government selling you your rights back to you. That's what licenses are. Now, if someone wants to get a license, absolutely. We'll show you how to get it in your city, your state. You know, our classes, again, are voluntary funded. You can come learn for free.
That's part of your training program.
It's part of the training. But I'm also going to tell you that license is an infringement. It is, you know.
In this story, the author of We Will Shoot Back.
Great book.
The history of armed resistance predates armed nonviolence.
What does he mean?
The history of armed resistance predates our nonviolence. This nonviolent thing was a tactic by the great and honorable Dr. Martin Luther King. It was a tactic. Television was becoming a thing. His thought process was, he studied Gandhi, right? The thought process was, if legitimate, good white folks see what's happening to African Americans, like as television would show it on the news, they would go, nah, that's just wrong. This is where I can't all the way fully get with like, oh, every person that's insert whatever group is insert whatever thing. There were good white folks during that time that were like, that's wrong, bro. No different than Thomas Paine was like, nah, Thomas Jefferson, we can't write the Declaration of Independence and then own humans. It's a contradiction, right? When you see the history of the African American experience and using firearms to defend self, to defend ideals, we fought in every major war for this nation. Even during a time when, and I say we, I wasn't there, right? But, you know, lineage-wise, even when my elders and ancestors were not even looked upon as first-class citizens, we were looked at as denizens, right? We still fought for what we believed. So much so that, you know, Britain and those guys was like, yo, come fight for us, fight against America, and we'll give you your freedom. So our history, we have a rich tradition of firearms ownership and defending our values and our lives since our, you know, inception on these lands.
He says nonviolence would not have been able to operate without black people who were well armed.
100%. The South would have won in the Civil War, if not for black people. Like, let's be clear. The South would have won in the Civil War, if not for black men. That's not a diss. It's just the fact of the matter. It's just what it is. Everybody should read this. There's a magazine called The Black Chronicle, which chronicles newspaper clippings from like the way back, right? All the way up into like the 1980s. It's called The Black Chronicle. And there's actual articles in like a printout, it's about this thick, of all of those articles talking about those things from way back in the day. And we were fighting against the transatlantic slave trade, the MAFA, Jim Crow, black codes, slave codes. It wasn't about like, you know, if we lose, we're just gonna get a like slap on the wrist. No different than the founding fathers to this place, with their contradictions, right? If they would have lost, you're getting hung. The correlation between the desire for freedom in those spaces are very clear. And you wasn't gonna get that without physical violence. America was built on money and violence. I'm an American.
In the video, there's a woman.
I do not think that the Second Amendment is interpreted the same for Caucasians as it is for black gun owners.
Yeah, that's I mean, like, unless you really know what you're doing, right? And that's why training is very important. And unless you start to understand and utilize the Second Amendment as is, as opposed to how mainstream narratives may try to package it. And that doesn't just mean black folk. That means some law enforcement officers. We go back to, you know, the story of Philando Castile. And that guy wasn't white. Officer or ex-officer Yanez wasn't a white dude. He was Hispanic. The narrative that anyone with a firearm is a bad guy is a pervasive theme, especially if you are in an urban environment and if you happen to be black. If you don't articulate these things very well, it's very easy for corrupt portions or ignorant portions of law enforcement or other people to just think it's bad. When I'm in a
If you don't articulate it, if you don't say, yeah, I have a gun to protect Myself.
Boom. And now the reality is, this is where the double standard lies. And some people may not like that I'm going to say this. White folks don't got to articulate their position in the same way. Black people in America had to fight for civil rights. You have civil rights when your human rights have been denied, right? The fact that black guns matter, our work exists, speaks to the problem. The job is to make my job obsolete. But the reality is, it's not generally, until we started doing this work and getting people involved, it's becoming more the norm now, and it should be the norm. Everybody should be walking around and like, oh man, I left my gun in the house. Let me go back and get it. It should be as normal as a cell phone.
Everybody?
Everybody. There's at least 100 million gun owners that we are aware of. Those are rookie numbers.
There are a record high number of gun sales right now among Black Americans. According to the National Shooting Sports Foundation, in the first quarter of last year, 90% of gun retailers reported an increase in Black customers.
If you don't want a firearm, you should not be forced to buy one. But if you're curious and you think that maybe I need a firearm to hunt, maybe I want to learn about the safety components, maybe I want to shoot for fun, maybe I want to buy guns for investment, because, since fully auto, there's an extra set of regulations on that. Even though it's legal, you can buy fully auto and sell them later on for a lot more money. My point in saying this is, yes, every American should be exercising their human right to self-defense, whichever way where they land on that. If the trend, which is true, continues, that more firearms owners, safe and responsible firearms owners means less crime, I absolutely want more people to have firearms. These phrases, these catchphrases like an armed society is a polite society, absolutely. If I'm the rapey McNapey guy, I'm just a weirdo running around looking to rape people, right? Or let's say it's you, John. You're a rapey McNapey. And I'm super handsome. And I am super handsome. And you say, you know what? Maj, I'm going to get some of that. And I go, oh man, John, don't do it to me. And if I don't have the means to stop you, well, it's just going to happen to me, right? But if there's a 70% chance that you're like, nah, that handsome guy Maj is probably armed, you're going to think twice about that. Now, I'm making light of it. Obviously, you're not rapey McNapey, and I absolutely am not that handsome. However, if we take that same thought process and we look at young women, college campuses, and there are rapey McNapey guys out here, why do we want that woman of any ethnic background in America to not have the means to defend herself from that guy? We want that guy to think that woman, that rapey McNapey, wants to get is probably armed, and he's going to think twice. And we need to give women that empowerment. We need to give all Americans that level of empowerment. And with that empowerment comes responsibilities. That's why we present these classes for everyone for free.
Should there be any rules? Should untrained people have to take a class like yours?
No, they should be safe and responsible. I don't rely on the state to determine what's safe and what's not. Most law enforcement officers don't train. They qualify 1 to whatever amount of times per year. They're not the pinnacle of training. And it shouldn't be. Again, these are rights. The Bill of Rights are rights granted by your creator, not granted by government. Our job as gun owners is to make sure that the general public is, hey man, a part of this culture is being safe and responsible and getting training. We can do that, like we did at Black Guns Matter with less than $300,000 raised in some classes. So no, the state is not in control of that. We are. We, the people.
Talk about this shirt. Make criminals afraid again.
Absolutely. Criminals should be definitely afraid. The concern should be, what are we calling a crime? I'm a libertarian. Crimes have to produce victims. So most of the things that we're calling crime doesn't really produce a victim. It's the state's kind of like saying, we don't want you to do this, so we'll call it a crime. We'll charge you money for it.
Like?
If it doesn't fall in the category of robbery, rape, unjustified homicide, or property crimes, right? So if it's, hey, I want to buy some cannabis, and you, John, have the cannabis, and I have the money, and you have the cannabis. Oh, in some states still, that's a crime, even though that's nothing but commerce. So when I say make criminals afraid again, if you're the people that are in my community, and if you're robbing people and carjacking, I want you to know that we're going to arm our community to deal with you very, very properly. And you should be, if you're thinking about robbing, raping, or unjustified killing, you should be very afraid of our work at Black Guns Matter.
People say, you want to put more guns in the very neighborhoods where there are the most shootings.
Okay. So how's that work? The areas where there's less guns, there's more violent crime. The areas where there's more guns, there's less violent crime.
What are you saying? There are fewer guns in Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago?
There's fewer guns. There's less education around firearms. There's a far less respect for the Second Amendment and education that comes along with it. Absolutely. Those areas.
I think of those areas as filled with guns.
Why do you think so?
Because there are all those shootings.
We live in Chicago, but we're in a war zone.
The spike in gun violence in the city nationwide. Crime up 38% overall in New York City.
So if there's 1,000 bad guys, let's just take a number, 1,000, in the city of Philadelphia, which is 1.5, 1.6 million people, right, on average, right? 5th or 6th largest city in America. And those 1,000 bad guys are doing the vast majority of the crime. And that's in any community. Most Americans in any community aren't the bad guys. It's a small percentage of those guys. And if the district attorney gives them a revolving door, they're back out to do more of the bad stuff. Now,
which is happening in Philadelphia.
It's happening in Philly. Now, the report isn't this one bad guy did this 10 times. It's just 10 times this was done. So the context is missing a bit. So for someone like me, I'm not an advocate for being soft on actual crime. I'm saying we should have those 1,000 guys pay their debt to society and the estate of the people that they harmed. They should be rehabilitated in prison, not just we there to make stuff for companies. But when you look at it from that perspective, you see that it's a small percentage of bad guys doing this terrorism in a community, but it's getting reported as if it's all of these guns. Most gun owners, because the good guys with guns outnumber the bad guys with guns. The good guys with guns just aren't doing the crime, though. So where these data folks tend to use the stats to make it look as if more guns mean more crime, the great work by Dr. John Lott in his book, More Guns, Less Crime, exists. And so if they take the context out, they don't tell you it's, and again, I'm paraphrasing, they don't tell you it's the same 1,000 bad guys. It's way more gun owners, that's good guys that have it. They can paint that narrative for you. No different than when they don't tell you that 60% of the thing that they're calling gun violence is suicides. So they don't say that. 60% of what in America.
Another reason for gun control, say the advocates.
How could you stop that?
You take away the guns, fewer people kill themselves with guns.
How? Okay, so let's roll out how that looks. Let's go with, and we live in America, so I'm gonna be careful on how I go with other countries and how they do stuff. I live in America, bro. Wi-Fi here is plentiful. Can't say the same for every other country. With that being the case, let's look at Britain, London. Let's look at London. They take away guns. General public doesn't really have guns. What happens to their violent crime? Goes up. Now they're saying we need to end knife violence. Now there's a push to stop people from having knives. Oh, the knife violence is at an all-time high. Listen, evil will persist. The only thing that's going to stop evil are good, solid people strong enough to stop them or even deter them. So this theory, that violence will stop, I'll make a bet. I'll give away all of my firearms and I will be pro no more guns. As soon as the law enforcement say, you know what? We think guns are bad and guns are going to create more crime. So we as law enforcement we're just not going to use firearms for a week.
Well, law enforcement is different. They're trained and they're
No, they're not.
Officers of the state meant to protect us.
The state has killed more humans than anything in world history, the government. We don't even get a guy to get out of like Mao, Hitler, and like communism to even look at how many millions of humans, hundreds of millions of humans were murdered by the state. And the state is the people that should be the only ones that have guns. Kenny, our mayor in Philadelphia, said some goofiness like that a few months ago.
I was in Canada 2 weeks ago, never thought about a gun. The only people I knew had guns up in Canada were police officers. And that's the way it should be here.
He is the mayor of the birthplace of America saying that. And if people feel that way, this is going to sound really racist, right? But it's okay because I'm black, so I get to say it, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If you don't like gun ownership, if you don't like that we as Americans have the ability to say, we want to defend ourselves from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that includes government, as the founders wrote. If you don't like that, Canada's right up the street, bro. I hear their bacon is delicious. I hear Drake makes great albums. There's a plethora of other countries that you can go to, and you can leave the Americans to have to deal with this firearm thing. You can literally not deal with it. If you want to go, if you think that things are so horrible, if you want to go to China and deal with the CCP, you are welcome to do that. The beauty of America, right? And again, this is not an attack on the people of these other nations. We are all humans. But those governments are not there to serve the people. And if you think that socialism and you want to shoot over to Venezuela or wherever, you are free to do so. The Americans are going to deal with the American problems. And we are consistently going to push back against these narratives that are like easily proven to be incorrect. 60% of gun-related deaths are suicides. What we address is what's making those people, that 60% of so-called gun violence, what's making them feel so stressed out and depressed that they don't want to be here anymore. Maybe it's all of the meds that we're sponsored by Pfizer. Maybe it's the psychotropic meds that they're shoveling down children's throats. And as the time that they're teenagers, now they just want the pain to stop. But we can't have that conversation because now we impacting the money. It's easy to just blame the firearm while making Americans unarmed so the state, being the only entities with the firearms, can have complete control. No, it will not happen, not on my watch.
You're saying that those people would have killed themselves some other way.
Absolutely.
If they didn't have a gun.
Yeah, they picked the firearm because the firearm actually works. And I say this with empathy, not a diss to anyone that's lost a loved one. They want the pain to stop fast. Firearms are fast. They want it to stop. Whatever pain and turmoil that they are experiencing, they want it to stop. So they use something that works. Firearms work. We need to approach that community, these young people, right? And make them be a part of this American experience. Get outside, get some sunlight, things of that nature. You know what I mean?
More guns may lead to less crime, but they'll also lead to more accidental shootings.
What makes you think?
Because there are a lot of gun accidents. Kids get to their parents' guns. Thousands of people are accidentally killed by guns.
Do you know what I want those people, the parents in those spaces, to do? If this is where I, as a gun owner, I keep no quarter for negligence. There's no such thing as an accident when it comes to firearms ownership. There's 4 fundamental basic rules of firearm safety. Even if you don't want to purchase a gun, you should be aware and you should be teaching your children about firearm safety.
But if there are more guns, there will be more accidents.
You can't definitively say that. That's only under the assumption that those more gun owners, if we're failing, which we are not, at getting people to train and be safe and responsible gun owners, that's under the assumption that those gun owners aren't getting training. And the trend for the last 38, 39 months going on is not that. They're getting firearms and they're becoming trained without government intervention, without the state saying, you gotta do this. The culture, as Andrew Breitbart said, politics are downstream from culture. Black Guns Matter is changing the culture. If you don't get informed, don't get knowledge about firearms ownership, and there is a negligent discharge, which means you have to break 2 of the 4 firearms rules for that to happen, right? And one of your children hurts themselves, I want you as the adult to be held accountable. I am not soft on that type of stuff at all. I am for accountability. No different than in my community. If you use a firearm not for personal protection and defense, if you're not defending yourself from the bad guy, and you are the bad guy with a firearm, I want you to have your day in court. I want you to have a jury of your peers, and we're going to get you locked up. I am not soft on actual crime.
Why'd you start Black Guns Matter?
The Black Lives Matter movement. Everybody's Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. except when it's time for black people to defend their lives. Seeing the highly organized phenomenon that gun control is, and seeing its concentration primarily in black neighborhoods. Not because black people got a genetic predisposition to kill people. No, crime is proximity. We saw that you guys are lying to the people. You're telling this group of people, no, that's not for you. And nowhere in the Second Amendment does it say, or the Constitution, or the Bill of Rights, does it say anything about race. It's not in there. And even if it was, you guys also said in the Bill of Rights, government does not grant or take away these rights. So for me, it was more about informing. Black Guns Matter is about education and informing people. So when you see that your people been lied to, you a sucker if you don't inform them. And so for me, it was that.
You have a gun on you now?
Absolutely.
Where is it? Ankle?
Wait, hold on, John. Nobody wears, the ankle thing is like television. That's like the most, well, maybe a secondary gun. Maybe a secondary gun. Usually, I have if I'm doing something on my ankle, it's a wraparound med kit, because I usually carry a first aid kit with me too. And if I'm doing outside work and I don't have a book bag, I'll put that on my ankle.
So you have the gun on your hip, so you can get to it.
No, I usually carry appendix. Let me tell you why. When you're carrying concealed, to clear the garment, get to the firearm, and line up your sights to put it on, to get your sight picture, to put it on the bad guy, the guy absolutely determined to do carnage, it's easier to line those sights up when it's appendix. Carrying on your hip, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, it's just an extra step.
So you start Black Guns Matter.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about it.
I literally said, let's go make classes available to every hood across America. Every state that has a hood, we're gonna go there. We're gonna make the classes available. We're gonna teach people the basics. We're gonna tell them this, and it could turn into a civics conversation, a safety conversation, and it continues to grow. But we just said, we're gonna educate the people. We're gonna do what the public school system failed to do. And we're gonna make the backdrop of that being a safe and responsible firearms owner. We crowdfunded, we literally raised hundreds of thousands of dollars and gave it away to make sure that everybody could have this information. And what happened? What we said was, we're gonna make this demographic be the new largest gun buying demographic in America, and that's what happened. It's just a little bit of elbow grease, a couple dollars, that's it. And the beautiful thing is, we've removed the financial barrier to entry. All of the classes are free to all, and it's such a wonderful thing. In the classes, we go over grip, stance, sight alignment, sight picture, general nomenclature, basically the basics. Even before we get to that, the actual firearms, we deal with safety. We deal with the basic 4 rules of firearm safety. We deal with how we can avoid conflict. We deal with, if you're in some sort of conflict, how can we de-escalate? It's irresponsible to have one part of the conversation about firearms without that part of the conversation. I carry a firearm everywhere. If I'm in a sticky situation, unless there's an immediate threat to life, I am leaving. I am out with my gun. I'm gone. And we recommend that every single person do that. I win 100% of the fights that I'm not a part of. And that's a basic staple of our classes.
You expected 30 people? How many showed up?
300, and we had to feed them all. And it was beautiful. Based on my outreach, community outreach, the things that I was already known for, they knew it was gonna be empowering because I never judged them. I said, hey, if you wanna come learn about firearms, come on and learn. Come as you are. We went around the country teaching every area. We went to every area that was violent crime and did classes. Some of the classes in Atlanta, 400 or 500 people. We created a culture of, if you are Black in America, you absolutely have a human right to defend yourself with a firearm. We've been doing this since 2015 and 16. 2016, we only did it in Philadelphia. 2016 was the year that Philadelphia had the lowest violent crime that it had since 1979. All we did was gun-related stuff and conflict resolution. It's just a habit, but it's cool. That's how you're gonna break the habit. If that comes, let me show you how that's wrong. If that comes here, when you pull that trigger, that comes back out. You know what I'm saying? So put those thumbs forward, put that finger out of there.
When you pull the trigger, those thumbs forward, what are you doing there?
In that particular video, I was explaining to her the actual grip of a handgun, right? She had her finger not indexed on the frame of the actual pistol. She had her finger in the trigger guard on the trigger. One of the basic safety rules that we go over at our classes is you don't put your finger in that trigger guard on the trigger until you're absolutely ready to shoot. Firearms are ergonomically designed for your finger to go in the trigger. So it's a discipline. And when I told her about it, she was like, oh no. And obviously we were training with SIRT pistols, but it's just a habit. And when you get a better habit, you know, as people will tell you, when they start carrying firearms, when you go to the gas pump, your finger's not on the trigger until you're ready to actually pump the trigger. When you spray in your windows with Windex, your finger's off of the trigger. We want to develop good habits. We want firearms beginners to firearms to have a solid, sound foundation of safety, conflict resolution, and de-escalation. I carry a firearm everywhere. I'm also keen on avoiding situations where I would even think about have to potentially using my firearm or use my firearm. And so those are all of the good habits that we want to instill. And in that video, that's kind of what I was going over with.
Why do you use replica guns?
Because I don't want to give a beginner that knows absolutely nothing about a firearm.
Oh, good. Good. Good.
What are you doing there?
When you're presenting, right? When you clear your garment and you present that firearm, right? It has to be firm. Your wrists need to be tight. No loosey-goosey. You need to be firm. So when I'm hitting that firearm or that handgun going up, down, sideways, I'm making sure that that person has a firm grip. Because when you press the trigger, an explosion's gonna happen. You need to, quite literally, dad joke, get a grip.
The fastest growing group of gun buyers is now blacks?
Prophetic. I said it. I made it so.
What, you made it so?
Absolutely.
This other group?
National Association of Gun, African.
Their membership almost doubled during COVID.
Yeah.
What did COVID have to do with it?
People was in the house. Crime was, all of the leftist cities, and I say that again, not as a slight, they were saying, we're gonna let the criminals out, actual criminals. We're gonna tell the police to not respond. This happened. They showed you exactly what it meant. You are on your own. The police have absolutely no legal obligation to protect you. That has been proven and upheld by the Supreme Court numerous times. And I love it. I love that more people are saying, no one's coming to save me. I have to save and protect myself and my family myself.
Gun opponents point out correctly that the Second Amendment never says individuals have the right. A well-regulated militia being necessary to a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
The first half of that is always the anti-gunners playfield, because they'll try to conflate militia meaning military, and it doesn't. It means the people. That's why they ended it with the people. We are the militia, right? So anti-gunners paradise is the first half of the Second Amendment. They'll go, oh, it needs to be well-regulated. Well-regulated means in working order. If your house is well-regulated, you guys have a schedule, you eat at a certain time. That does not mean that the government shows up and goes, hey, now you guys got to watch The House of Dragons at 9 o'clock. That's not what that means. It means in working order. What they ignore if you're an anti-gunner is the second half of that. The right of the people, the Constitution starts with we, the people, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, keep, hold them, and bear, carry, mean walk around with them, shall not be infringed. That's very clear. People will attempt to convolute that to strengthen their argument, but it can't be.
The LA City Council unanimously approved a ban of so-called ghost guns, which are virtually untraceable.
Comes in this package. You can see the picture down here maybe. This is the gun. It's not hard to put together. Little drill, hand drill at home. Doesn't take very long. Anyone can order it.
Joe Biden being upset about what the Supreme Court has just ruled, that unserialized firearms do not violate the Constitution, him being upset about that speaks to his disrespect for the American people having the means to defend themselves. If everyone has access to a butter knife, I could get a butter knife and stab somebody's eyes out with it. Butter knives are everywhere. They're at the cafeteria. They're at that fancy restaurant. They're in Chick-fil-A. To say, well, these type of butter knives are assault knives. These type of butter knives need different regulation. Simply because someone could do the wrong thing with the right tool, it would sound silly. To everyone that's listening to it, it sounds silly. It's the same thing with a firearm. People go, oh, it's 22s, 40 calibers, this, that. It's a bullet. If we are not respectful of this tool and use it improperly, we could harm ourselves or others. Adding all of this fear-mongering on top of a fundamental human right, right? We're actually keeping Joe Biden and this current administration, meaning gun owners, we're keeping them safe. They're playing around with nuclear war. One of the reasons why America has not been invaded is because they know we about that action. Our respect for firearms and freedom and not wanting to be bothered or bother other people is why we haven't invaded Canada and Mexico. They're weaker than us. We have more guns than them. We've respected their space. If gun owners, over 100 million in America, were the problem, you'd know it, because our opposition would not exist. They wouldn't be here. Gun owners aren't the problem. Biden being afraid about unserialized, no, that's not the problem. Ghost guns aren't the problem. There's not a massive amount of mass shootings or any type of shooting done with ghost guns, so-called ghost guns. The reason why they're afraid of them is because they can't track them. You guys worried about what us as gun owners are doing and where our guns are is because I would contend that you plan on doing things or have already been doing things that you know we probably should shoot you for.
Banning concealed carry guns in so-called sensitive places. That includes Times Square. The city posting temporary signs. There you see them putting it up. The crossroads of the world, a gun-free zone.
They're banning in so sensitive areas.
In 1990, now President Joe Biden crafted the legislation that became what's known as gun-free zones. It became a law, a federal situation, in 1991 under the Clinton administration. Since then, 1991, 90% of mass shootings are in gun-free zones.
Machine guns should be legal too?
Machine guns are legal.
And they should be?
Yes.
What, you don't need a machine gun for self-defense?
Well, how many people are there? Where are you? And why is it about the owning of the machine gun? What if you just want to do it because you want to have a good time shooting? Having fun on a safe and controlled environment.
What about a bazooka?
They're illegal.
Should they be?
Absolutely.
What's the difference?
Why does the government get to have something that the people don't? What would the government be trying to do that they think they should have something that the people shouldn't?
How about a nuclear weapon?
I'm not interested in them. I personally don't believe the state or the government is made up of humans, right? They're made up of humans. I personally don't believe that one set of humans is more deserving or worthy or special than another set of humans. So until you start showing me the government guys that are perfect in their judgment and completely non-biased and super safe and perfect and got an extra set of brain that makes them smarter, more intelligent, and they can see the future. Until you start seeing that, no, anything that the state should have, so will I.
Why are you a libertarian?
I think most Americans actually are.
I don't think so. I get a lot of pushback.
Okay, what's the pushback? In theory,
we don't care about other people. That we won't take care of the needy. That we won't defend America.
I disagree. I think that most Americans, when you explain it to them thoroughly that way, if you ask most Americans, hey, do you think that the needy should get some assistance here and there? Maybe even if you say individually or from the private sector or voluntarily. Most Americans will be like, yeah, you will have some people that say, we're here to give you a hand up short term if you need it, but we're not here to give you a handout just because you're being lazy. But I think that most Americans fall in that section. They won't say, hell no, we don't want to help. I think that mainstream narratives and a horrible public school education will make you not understand that what liberty actually is. You know, when we start telling people in my community about Patrick Henry or George Mason or Thomas Paine or Malcolm X or Benjamin Franklin or Harriet Tubman, very few people, when they have an understanding of what those great men and women did and do, even current, alive people, most people are in alignment with that. If you ask most Americans and say, hey, do you want more limited government? Do you want to keep more of your money? And should the general theme be don't hurt people, don't take their stuff? You're going to be hard pressed to get most Americans to say, nah, give me more government. So they just don't understand the concept because mainstream media doesn't push that narrative.
Harriet Tubman was packing most of the time.
Yeah, she needed to be. So let's go back to why she needed to be though, right? The state involved itself and said, slavery is okay. That's the biggest stain on our flag, right? The state was responsible for sanctioning that. If it wasn't for strong women like Harriet Tubman, liberty-minded, saying, nah, this is not cool, it's not okay, it's a contradiction of the founding fathers, what they wrote down, not what they all did, but what they wrote down, she wouldn't have had the bravery to oppose that during a time when, an opposition meant death. And more people should think about that right now. We tend to think, because this was the past, that there's still not an assault on our liberties and or freedoms. And it is.
I don't think that the activists promoting her to be on the $20 bill would be happy to hear that she was packing.
Well, it depends on what activist you're asking. If you asking me, I have a whole jacket with $20 bills with Harriet Tubman on them, right? Harriet Tubman is the essential story of liberty. It's Rocky, way before Rocky.
And he says he wants more. He wants more.
It's the underdog fighting against actual oppression, right? Actual whatever. So most of the people that are being presented as activists aren't even active in the community. They just say stuff on Twitter, right? But if you ask people doing community work, if you ask the guys down in Miami, Green Haven Farms that are growing food and giving it away to the people of Miami in not South Beach, the rough part of Miami, they'll absolutely, because that's activism, health, right? They'll absolutely understand and be happy that Harriet Tubman had, carried a firearm everywhere she went.
Conservatives say libertarians don't want to spend enough in the military, that we don't want to defend America.
That's false. And those people aren't conservatives, they're bootlickers. Generally. Most conservatives, and I want to be clear on how I say this, right? Because a lot of my friends and family, left or right, are liberals or conservatives. We're all Americans, we're all humans, right? I am critiquing some of the actions of far fewer so-called conservatives, right? You'll say you're a conservative and then ask for more police presence, i.e., more government. That is not a conservative value. It's just not. You'll say you're conservative, but be in alignment with reckless government spending. That is not conservative. And it never has been. So the definition of these things is something that we have to reevaluate. Most people don't even know what an etymological dictionary is. They don't study the etymology of words. Even the co-opting of terms. Classic liberals were freedom dudes, right? So those conservatives don't know what that would say don't know what conservatism actually is yet.
They say it's having a strong defense and a strong military.
So do libertarians. Libertarians believe in firearms. Libertarians believe we should have strong defense to defend ourselves from enemies, foreign and domestic.
But libertarians said we should have gotten out of Afghanistan a long time ago.
We should have never been there in the first place. Where were the weapons of mass destruction? Bush lied. Listen, I love the job that public servants have to do. Some of them are dishonest about it. There were no weapons of mass destruction. That's not even like a conspiracy theory at this point, So they made a mistake, but it's better to be strong and not lie. They didn't make a mistake. They lied. They
didn't know. I don't think they knew.
You got to be trolling me right now. You're absolutely They absolutely knew. Dick Cheney and the boys, they knew. They knew.
Why do you call the media the most effective devil in America?
They are. If you guys don't like this interview right now, you could edit me and make me the music that you'll choose, the color schemes. You can edit me to look any type of way.
And we're doing bad things these days, the media?
Generally, absolutely.
Don't trust the media or colleges, says Toure. He proudly says he's self-educated.
I'm absolutely a high school dropout. The greatest men and women, like when you think about it, right? There's a difference between well-read, well-studied, and like well so-called educated, right? When you talk about the founders to this place, these dudes were like bakers and like blacksmiths. Benjamin Franklin was a multi-level genius. He didn't have a degree. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying that like they can't have a degree. I'm just saying like the things that build empires aren't generally like your liberal arts degree. I'm not knocking it. Like, you know, somebody's got to be the barista. Like, I'm not tripping. I'm just saying that like this industry is built by strength. And like, do you know how to weld? Do you know how to grow food? Do you know how to sew? Do you know how to like make bullets? You know, so that type of information comes without necessarily a collegiate background, right? Then you take it out of the founders, because I'm always critical of the founders. These are not men that I deify, because a lot of them owned humans, right? They're just men. Like I do, man, I've been at the strip club, and some people would feel like that's like, oh, you're so righteous. Why were you like throwing money at women, right? They could, and I understand that. So no need to deify anyone. Just be objective, right? So when we take it out of the founders, we go to guys like one of my favorite heroes, Malcolm X. What high school he was out. But he kept evolving and being honest right in front of our face, right? When he was incarcerated, Malcolm X famously read and studied the entire dictionary. And then went, okay, these words mean this. This is the contract that you said were for all Americans. We, as African Americans, are owed that contract. And if you're trying to trick my people, I'm going to call you on it. And he kept evolving, to the point where he was attempting to take the United States government, the state, not the people, attempting to take the United States government to court, in international court, for their unfair and racist practices towards African Americans. No, high school dropout. So, yeah, I'm a high school dropout. I love the fact that I was not indoctrinated that way. What college did Bill Gates graduate from? None. He left. He made so much money by not being cemented into one way of thinking, being an actual free thinker. He made so much money and changed the world so rapidly that this school was like, dude, just come back and get an honorary degree. Outside of the box. We have to stop, like, American is not boxing. Like, it's not this boxed way of thinking. We're allowing it to make us this way. Because we just go, oh, Department of Education says I have to get in debt for $200,000. Now I'm in debt again. And you've made no significant addition to this place. When I say that, I'm not saying that disrespectfully, but getting in debt, we see people asking for like student loan forgiveness. Those young people are absolutely being lied to. They're getting hustled into debt. Then as they become more intelligent, then it's like, bruh, why didn't y'all tell me that this was a lie? So for me, famously highlighting, yeah, I'm an absolute high school dropout. I wasn't cemented. But you know what else? I read everything. Left, right, Communist Manifesto, Rules for Radicals, Autobiography of Malcolm X, Nutricide, everything by Walter E. Williams, Thomas Sowell, whatever. I'm going to read everything. And I'm going to make the decision for myself. I'm actually an independent free thinker.
Thank you. This was really interesting.
Thank you for having me, John. Appreciate it.
At Stossel TV, we like independent thinkers like him. So who else do you think we should do an extended interview with? Please let us know in the comments below.